ACEC is excited to announce that registration is now open for its fall conference taking place in Marco Island, Florida this October. That's right, after a year of Zoom and virtual meetings, we're excited to be bringing our fall conference back as an in-person event. And we can't tell you how excited we are to look forward to seeing you there in person for all of the content, networking, and education that the fall conference is known for. Log on to www.acec.org for more information. We can't wait to see you there. Now, before we start today's program, I want to bring to everybody's attention a webinar that we're going to be holding on Monday, October 11th at 1:30 p.m. And it's titled, Ensuring Adequate COVID Safety Protocols for Federal Contractors. Now, this is going to deal with a lot of the looming questions surrounding Executive Order 14042 related to vaccination protocols for federal contractors. We're going to have attorneys from Covington and Burling, their Contracts Practice Group, at this webinar to talk about the questions that surround this mandate, and really encourage everyone to listen and to sign up for this webinar because it's dealing with something which is coming down the pike very quickly and is of concern to many members. So again, Monday, October 11th at 1:30, Ensuring Adequate COVID Safety Protocols for Federal Contractors. It's a live webinar. Sign up at www.acec.org. Welcome to the Government Affairs Update for Friday, October 8th, 2021, in what is shaping up to be a very busy October. 3 impending votes. Number one is the debt ceiling and the debt limit, which is the probably the most timely that we're looking at right now. The two others are, of course, reconciliation and the infrastructure bill, which is being tied up with the reconciliation process. Last Friday, we were very hopeful that there was going to be a vote on infrastructure, and it unfortunately did not come to pass. There was no agreement on reconciliation. And today, at the time of this recording, there's no agreement on reconciliation. And to talk about these issues, we're very pleased to bring on Steve Hall, of course, our head of advocacy, to give us a situational update on where things stand. Steve, welcome on.
Great to be here, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So where are things right now with all this mix of must-pass legislation?
Well, I think, as you indicated, there seems to be a path forward on the debt ceiling, and we sort of assumed that this would eventually come to pass. There would be some tap dancing on both sides and some political gamesmanship. But at the end of the day, Congress is going to do the right thing and to make sure that the federal government doesn't default. And so we'll see that play out here in the next week or so. The other two issues are a bit stickier and thornier, and particularly when it comes to infrastructure and as well as progress on reconciliation. Reconciliation is the vehicle for the president's social agenda. This is a core priority for progressive members in the Democratic caucus. They regard this, I think, as a higher priority than infrastructure. And until they are assured that they have a path forward, they're going to be an obstacle on infrastructure, which is unfortunate because infrastructure traditionally, as you know, has been very, very bipartisan. So it really comes down to, with respect to that reconciliation bill, that social policy bill, is what is the number? What is the top line number that will pass the Senate and is acceptable to the House? And what we hope is that they find that sweet spot soon. The House is assuming $3.5 trillion. Moderates in the Senate, led by Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, think that $1.5 trillion is closer to the sweet spot. So naturally, a lot of folks are speculating that maybe the deal is somewhere in the $2 trillion range, plus or minus. But the hope is that once they figure what that is, and progressives see a good, strong path forward on the reconciliation bill, that they'll let the infrastructure bill move forward.
Yeah, and it's been a really a game of brinksmanship between the House progressives, the House moderates, and then also the Senate. Just Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. There are sub issues along with the price tag, which are the Hyde Amendment is a great example of one, which is it seems like it's a never-ending, perennial issue. The Hyde Amendment, of course, deals with federal funding of abortion,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, Joe Manchin does not want that taken out of the bill, and the leaders of the progressives in the House want that taken out of the bill. That's a sub issue, really, unrelated to the top dollar figure of the bill. But so, I mean, there are a lot of aspects of the reconciliation package that need to be hammered out before we can get into an avenue where infrastructure is going to be passed. And my understanding from Catherine, our tax and regulatory expert, is that even if an agreement is reached, it's not as though the next day they're going to be able to really move quickly on this. There are technical aspects to dealing with a reconciliation package that need to be surmounted before infrastructure would have a very clear path. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
that's correct. And if they were be able to cut a deal in the next week or two, we could be into November at the earliest before they actually pass a reconciliation bill. But what we don't know is what is the point in that process at which progressives are willing to say, okay, we're ready now to vote for infrastructure.
Yeah.
Is it the point where they find that number, that magic number, or is it further down the process?
Mm-hmm.
That piece, I don't think we know yet. I don't think
Yeah.
Democratic leaders in the House and the Senate have. I'm sure they're thinking of it. Maybe that's been decided. That hasn't been announced yet, but that's a critical point in terms of when the vote on infrastructure occurs. And what's adding urgency to this, of course, is the fact that the clock is ticking. The Congress passed a 1 month extension to the FAST Act to give themselves more time to get this done.
Mm-hmm.
We saw the program lapse for a day last week, and we do not want that to happen with any federal infrastructure program, but most of all this one, given the
Absolutely.
amount of funds involved and the extent to which our members are heavily engaged. So they've got to get something worked out and figured out by October 31st. I suppose they could do another extension, but then you start to run into questions as to whether or not the Highway Trust Fund can even pay for another
Mm-hmm.
extension. There's dollars built into this infrastructure package to, dump a bunch of money into the Highway Trust Fund. And so without that, you start to run the risk of, practically speaking, the fund running out of money.
Yeah.
We need to get this done this month, and we're working closely with a whole bunch of stakeholder organizations and coordinating lobbying efforts, and all with the focus of getting this resolved, hopefully before October 31.
Yeah. And that's really an important point to drive home, is that we're in this period right now where the media, you turn on CNN or you look at the newspaper or read news online, and it's always going to focus around the personalities that are engaged around this bill, the reconciliation package. And infrastructure keeps on getting pushed down the article space. And we need to keep that up high, because the circus isn't really what matters to us. What matters to us is the policy. And as you mentioned, the longer we wait, the more complicated it gets. It's just not a question of kicking the can down the road and just extending. You're going to get into issues of financing with the Highway Trust Fund. You're going to get into issues of whether or not the federal is going to be solvent when this program would be extended. And getting it done sooner rather than later is the easiest thing to do. We don't want another extension. We've been extending this. We're dealing with right now an extension of the FAST Act that we're extending once again. We don't need to extend it again after this. So, keep the pressure on the members of Congress in your districts, and also the news media out there. I mean, take the opportunity to write some letters to the editor, reach out and talk about what this means to your state, your community, your firm, your employees, because it's the best way of keeping this top of the news cycle. So that's going to be our focus, without question, going into really fall conference. Honestly, we're going to be in Florida when this current extension, in theory, expires. So at least we'll all be together to make the point.
Well, yeah, hopefully we'll be together in Florida celebrating good news.
Exactly.
Otherwise, we're continuing to lobby and to your point, probably talking about what a shutdown of the program is going to mean
Yeah.
to the nation's economy and certainly to this industry, and it would be devastating
Mm-hmm.
if that happened. So I think lawmakers know that. I think that's what is increasing pressure on them to find that deal on reconciliation and let this go. It's unfortunate that infrastructure is being caught in this political crossfire, and it's not just the Democrats. I mean, they have
Oh,
their own struggles, but the Republican side of the aisle, particularly in the House, is playing hardball, and the
mm-hmm.
leadership there are putting pressure on rank and file Republicans that want very much to support this legislation to oppose it.
Yeah.
And because somehow it's closely linked to a reconciliation bill that has tax code changes that they don't like, and quite frankly, to be fair, there's those tax code changes we're not very excited about and very concerned about. So, but they are two separate pieces of legislation and really should be viewed as two separate and distinct legislation. And
Mm-hmm.
infrastructure is very bipartisan. A 50-50 Senate passed it with 69 votes. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
that
just
tells
a
you something.
phenomenal accomplishment.
Yeah.
So, hopefully, we can get enough of both sides to relent, Republicans and Democrats, get this good bill passed, and then let the lawmakers work their will on the reconciliation side. And
Yeah.
if they can find the majorities in the House and the Senate to move the bill, then move the bill. ACEC is going to be very vocal about what it likes and dislikes in that legislation, as well, other organizations. But let's not let that process, hold hostage this good bipartisan bill that the country needs.
Absolutely. And as the month goes on, as the extension starts winding down, it'll be interesting to see what the White House does, because it's the idea of saying you have this, of course, the large social aspect of the Build Back Better program out there, which has become a rallying cry with the progressives in the House. But at the same time, you have this 5-year historic generational investment in infrastructure, which is a significant win. I mean, some chairmen spend their entire chairmanship hoping to get something like this done. Sometimes administrations hope to get something this large done in a term. And it's just odd for me to see the administration allow this to go by or slip away from them when there's such an opportunity for a victory.
Yeah, no, the
Into the
White House
midterms.
wants this,
Yeah,
and I mean, it's going to give a nice boost to the economy. I think the stock market wants this. But again, we've got to wade through, like I said, politics on both sides of the aisle to get there. I think we will get there, Jeff. I think at the
yeah,
end of the day, common sense will prevail and we'll get there. But we've still got some work to do.
absolutely. Well, before I let you go, we talked to Dan Hilton a little bit earlier in the program related to the vaccine mandate, the executive order that's out for federal contractors. And got kind of the background and kind of where things are. We talked about the webinar that we're holding on Monday about this at 1:30. let me get your take. I mean, looking at this, what you're hearing from member firms, you've been out traveling to different states. What are your thoughts on this executive order and its implementation?
Well, I mean, the order is certainly well intentioned, and I think a reflection on the part of the White House of the urgency of containing the pandemic, and just one of the mechanisms and steps that it's taking to try to curtail the spread of variations of COVID. Similar requirements are being applied to the federal workforce. And OSHA has a rulemaking out there with respect to companies of 100 employees or more. But so we understand the imperative and understand the goal, and are certainly supportive of the goal. The concern is implementation and just the practical problems that are going to impact firms that will have to certify by December 8th that all of
Mhm.
their workforce working on federal contracts have been vaccinated. And I think it's probably safe to say in the cases of most firms, most of their employees have been vaccinated. But I mean, there's a sizable percentage, and we've talked to many that aren't, and who will have to be pulled off of projects on the 8th if that status hasn't changed. So that's concerning. So we've got this noble effort and goal to contain the spread of the virus that's colliding with the equally necessary goal of this industry and others like us to deliver services to our federal clients on behalf of the taxpayer. And the two are colliding with one another and are going to run at cross purposes with one another. So right now we are talking with a number of other organizations from the U.S. Chamber on down, and working together to see what we can do to persuade the federal government to make some changes, to consider adding, testing of non-vaccinated folks into the regime as a way of giving firms that work for federal agencies some flexibility, and possibly even asking for a delay in implementation if more time is needed to do this and do this right. There are a lot of unanswered questions as to who is covered, how many employees are covered, and the extent to which the requirement extends to federal aid programs such as highway and transit projects run by the states. Now, we think it doesn't reach that far, and the Federal Highway Administration has told us as much. But I don't know that they're completely certain just yet. This
Mhm.
is still very much an evolving process. So it is something that we are really focused on right now because of the near term implementation deadline. It's going to cause a great deal of problems for this industry again, and just in our ability to deliver for our clients. And that problem is compounded by the fact that we're already dealing with a serious shortage of talent,
Mhm.
and to be forced to pull people off of projects is only going to exacerbate that problem. And it's not a
Yes.
problem that is easily fixed. It takes a while to produce engineers
Mhm.
that can design infrastructure for our clients. So, this is very serious. It's something that the federal government needs to recognize and work with the affected community. Again, we all want the same thing. We certainly want very safe workforces and workplaces. But let's also recognize that we have a job to do, and we have services, vital services, to deliver on behalf of the taxpayer. And let's see if we can accomplish both of these goals in a way that is that's efficient and effective, and until we get through this pandemic and get on the other side of this problem.
Absolutely. Well put. Well, Steve, I know you're going to be on top of it all. And as we get into, I think this is a plug for the fall conference. I mean, this is a perfect, with all these things happening at once, coming together as an industry later this month in Florida is it's a great opportunity to talk about this stuff, to share experiences and really work together to solve these issues. So the registration is open. I go to our website and secure a spot down in Marco Island the last week of October for the fall conference. Steve will be there. I'll be there in force. But thanks again for taking the time today to talk to us.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me. And like you said, yeah, these are all going to be big, big topics at the fall conference in Florida. So we hope to see everybody there.
Absolutely. Well, again, this has been your Government Affairs update for Friday, October 8th, 2021. We will see you next time.